Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we get straight to the heart of things.
Mhm.
Today, we're tackling artificial intelligence, and, it's everywhere, isn't it? Often kind of hidden. Recommending your next show, spotting fraud, maybe even deciding on loan applications.
Mm.
Its power is just huge.
Oh.
So, let's unpack this. We're talking about everything from what AI is to how it's currently being governed, and what challenges that presents for all of us.
It really is fascinating. And this isn't new. Humans have been imagining artificial beings for ages. Golems, Frankenstein,
Right.
that sort of thing.
Right, those old stories.
But maybe that long history, that fascination, makes us focus a bit too much on the could be, what AI might do someday.
Instead of what's happening now.
Exactly. Instead of really looking hard at what it is doing right now, and crucially, what it should be doing.
Okay.
And that gap, between the eyes and the should, that's where so many problems crop up, and maybe where the solutions are too.
I see.
So yeah, our mission here is really to dig into that complex interplay between AI's capabilities and, well, our human rules law and ethics.
Making sense of it all.
Hopefully you'll get a clearer picture, not just of what AI does, but those big questions around how we actually govern it.
Okay, let's start with the societal side. Our sources really emphasize that AI, well, it's one technology among many, sure, but its rollout across so many different areas, healthcare, finance, education, even law enforcement, it just magnifies its impact massively, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it seems like there's this underlying condition in society that allows this rapid uptake, almost like a strong belief that innovation is inherently good.
Like tech is always the answer.
Sort of a technology solutionist view, yeah.
Yeah.
Equating progress purely with new tech without always asking if it actually leads to better outcomes for people or society.
That's a really interesting point. This underlying belief really fuels the whole thing.
It does. And
Right.
if we accept that technology shapes us just as we shape it, this mutual shaping process,
Which seems undeniable.
right, then we absolutely have to ask, how do we make sure this process protects our important standards? Legal, moral, political standards. Which brings us straight to the ethical minefield.
And the biggest mine, perhaps, is bias and discrimination. It's not just theory, is it? We've seen actual disasters,
Unfortunately, yes.
like the Dutch child care allowance scandal,
Mhm.
an AI system contributing to massive discrimination. It actually brought down a government. That's staggering.
It is, and it's not isolated. Think about those healthcare insurance algorithms discriminating against Black patients.
Right, because they linked race with healthcare spending, which is just flawed logic.
Deeply flawed. It meant lower reimbursements even for sicker patients. It really highlights how AI can bake in and even amplify existing societal biases if we're not incredibly careful.
So bias is huge. What else? Privacy must be up there.
Definitely. Privacy is a massive challenge. These algorithms, especially the big language models, they learn from vast amounts of data.
Including personal stuff.
Potentially, yes. They can inadvertently remember and maybe even spit out sensitive information they were trained on. Think social security numbers, bank details. It's a huge risk.
Wow, okay.
And then there's the environmental cost, the sustainability angle. Training these enormous models takes a staggering amount of energy. That has real-world carbon emission consequences we need to talk about.
That's often overlooked, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sticking with those language models, they create content.
Yeah.
Right? That opens a whole new can of worms.
It really does. Plagiarism is a concern. If an AI generates text that's heavily based on someone's specific work but doesn't credit them, well, that's problematic.
And jobs, the future of work.
That's the big question, too. As these
Okay.
tools get better at tasks, humans usually do writing, coding, even answering exam questions. What does that mean for employment?
Lots of uncertainty there. And then there's this black box issue you hear about.
Ah, yes, opacity. Many AI systems are incredibly complex, almost like black boxes. It's
Yeah.
really difficult, sometimes impossible, to understand exactly how they reached a particular decision.
Which makes holding them accountable pretty tough.
Extremely tough. If you can't understand the why, how can you fix errors or assign responsibility?
Okay, so facing all these challenges, bias, privacy, opacity, how do we move forward? You mentioned this mutual shaping. How do we guide it ethically?
Well, it points us towards something called a design for values approach. Basically building our values into the technology and the systems around it from the start.
And is there any agreement on what those values should be?
Actually, yes. There's been a remarkable convergence. Look at AI ethics guidelines from different organizations around the world, and you see the same principles popping up again and again.
Like what?
Things like transparency, justice, and fairness, non-maleficence, basically, do no harm, responsibility, and of course, privacy. These seem to be the core pillars.
So what does this all mean for how we approach AI ethically? Are there, practical ways to apply these principles?
Absolutely. We can look at it through different ethical lenses, like virtue ethics, focusing on the character of the people building and deploying AI. Are they considering the social context?
Okay.
Or consequentialism, does the AI actually lead to good outcomes for society? Or deontology, does the AI follow fundamental rules, like respecting privacy rights?
And in practice, are there examples of this design for values that aren't just tweaking the code?
Yes, definitely. And often the best solutions involve human oversight. Take Uber, for instance. They have a control room, run by humans, that can override the surge pricing algorithm during emergencies.
So the algorithm doesn't just run wild in a crisis.
Exactly. It's a human check. Another great example is an insurance company in New Zealand. They use AI to automate claim approvals that's efficient.
Makes sense.
But any claim the AI flags for rejection, that goes straight to a human team for review.
So a human always makes the final call on bad news.
Precisely. It keeps accountability clear, ensures people get proper explanations. It's about designing the whole system, the human parts and the tech parts, to uphold those values, not just focusing narrowly on the AI itself.
That really clarifies the design for values idea.
Yeah.
Okay, this interaction with society inevitably brings us to the law. Here's where it gets really interesting. How do existing laws, built before AI was so dominant, cope with all this?
That's the million-dollar question. Because AI processes so much personal data and influences such critical decisions, it absolutely demands legal guarantees. Data protection law is ground zero here, especially something like the GDPR in Europe.
Right, the GDPR. How does it handle AI?
Well, its definition of personal data is incredibly broad. Any information relating to an identified or identifiable natural person, and that identifiable part is key.
Why identifiable?
Because it's not static. Technology changes what makes someone identifiable. What was anonymous yesterday might not be tomorrow. Think about dynamic IP addresses. Courts have ruled even those can be personal data if someone, like an ISP, can reasonably link them back to a person.
So technology keeps moving the goalpost for privacy.
Exactly. And AI accelerates that. Techniques like linkage attacks, remember the Netflix prize dataset? Researchers managed to re-identify supposedly anonymous users by linking the data with other public info. AI makes these kinds of attacks easier.
Meaning data we think is anonymous might not be.
It blurs the line. Anonymization becomes much harder, maybe closer to pseudonymization, where the risk of re-identification remains.
Okay. What other GDPR challenges does AI pose?
A big one is lawfulness and purpose limitation. Basically, you should only collect and use data for specific, legitimate purposes you told people about upfront.
But AI models often want lots of data, maybe from different sources.
Right. And that leads to function creep. Data collected for one thing gets reused to train an AI for something totally different without proper consent or legal basis.
Like that Clearview AI case.
Exactly. Scraping billions of photos from the internet to build a facial recognition tool for law enforcement. Huge fines followed. Even ChatGPT faced a temporary ban in Italy over concerns about its training data and lack of legal basis.
Wow. So using data for new AI purposes is legally tricky. What about when lots of different companies are involved in one AI system? Who's responsible?
The controller issue. The GDPR talks about controllers who decide why and how data is processed, and sometimes joint controllers. This gets really complex with AI.
Cool.
Think about a website using a social media plugin. Courts have said both the website owner and the social media platform can be joint controllers for the data collected via that plugin, even if they don't directly coordinate everything.
So in a complex AI supply chain,
You could end up in a situation where potentially everyone involved is a joint controller. Untangling who's responsible for what becomes a real headache.
a legal tangle. And finally, under GDPR, there's this right to explanation for automated decisions, right?
Yes, a right to meaningful information about the logic involved. It sounds great in principle.
But the black box problem.
Exactly. How do you provide meaningful information about the logic of an incredibly complex, maybe even uninterpretable AI model? It's a massive technical and therefore legal challenge.
Okay, so data protection is complicated. What about when AI actually causes harm, like physical or financial damage? We need to talk liability.
Yes, tort law. And there's been a lot of debate about a potential responsibility gap.
The idea that maybe no one can be held liable if a truly autonomous AI messes up.
That's the argument some make. If a self-driving car causes an accident due to an unforeseen emergent behavior, who do you sue?
But isn't there always a human somewhere? The designer, the manufacturer, the operator.
That's the counter-argument, and it's pretty strong. AI systems themselves can't be morally responsible, they don't have feelings or consciousness, but humans can be held legally responsible.
If they were negligent, maybe.
If the harm was foreseeable, if there was negligence, if there's a causal link and some form of control, it's maybe less a fundamental gap in responsibility itself and more a practical problem of figuring out who among the many humans involved should be held accountable. The problem of many hands.
Like tracing responsibility in any complex system.
Precisely. And the EU is trying to help victims here with its AI liability directive. It proposes things like easing the burden of proof for victims harmed by high-risk AI, by introducing presumptions of fault or causality under certain conditions, and making it easier for victims to access evidence from the AI providers, which is crucial given the black box issue.
That sounds helpful. And is the definition of a defective product changing too?
Yes, significantly. The revised Product Liability Directive explicitly includes software, including AI, and crucially, when assessing if a product is safe, you now have to consider consumer expectations regarding its ability to continue to learn after deployment.
So an AI that learns to be unsafe after you buy it could be considered defective.
That's the implication. It's a major shift, recognizing the dynamic nature of AI.
Okay, shifting gears again, what about competition law? How does AI change market dynamics?
In some really fundamental ways. One big concern is algorithmic collusion.
Algorithms fixing prices.
Yes, it can happen in a few ways. Humans could explicitly design algorithms to collude. Or algorithms could just learn that coordinating prices with competitors is the most profitable strategy, even without explicit instruction.
Wow, algorithms teaching themselves to form cartels.
It's possible with reinforcement learning, and it's incredibly hard to detect. We saw a UK case where sellers used third-party pricing software that effectively led to them coordinating prices on Amazon.
And the law struggles with this.
Especially with the scenario where algorithms collude autonomously. Most competition law focuses on agreements or concerted practices between humans. If it's just the algorithms figuring it out, does that fall into a regulatory gap? It's a huge debate.
That's fascinating. Beyond collusion, what about dominant companies?
Abuse of dominance is another area. Large platforms can use AI, particularly in search rankings or recommendations, to unfairly favor their own services over competitors, self-preferencing.
Like the Google search shopping case.
Exactly. Google was found to have used its algorithm to systematically demote rival comparison shopping services while giving prominent placement to its own. That stifles competition and limits consumer choice.
Right. Okay, let's touch on consumer protection. You mentioned bias earlier. How does AI impact consumers more broadly?
One key thing is how AI challenges the traditional idea of the vulnerable consumer. Consumer law often focuses on protecting groups seen as inherently vulnerable, maybe due to age or disability.
But AI can target anyone.
Potentially, yes. AI can be very good at identifying and exploiting individual cognitive biases, things we all have. So in a way, AI could make all consumers vulnerable to manipulation, not just specific groups.
And that ties into dark patterns, right?
Absolutely. Dark patterns are essentially tricks in digital design user interfaces designed to nudge, deceive, or manipulate you into doing things you didn't intend to, like signing up for recurring payments or clicking on disguised ads.
Like those confusing checkboxes when you try to unsubscribe.
That kind of thing, yes. Or fake countdown timers, creating false urgency. AI can personalize and optimize these dark patterns at scale, making them even more effective and harder to spot.
And existing laws struggle.
Laws like the EU's Unfair Commercial Practices Directive try to tackle misleading or aggressive practices, but they weren't really designed with AI-driven, hyper-personalized manipulation in mind. It's another area where the law is playing catch-up.
Okay, one more legal area. Intellectual property, copyrights, patents. They were designed for humans, weren't they?
Entirely. The core concepts revolve around human authorship and human invention.
So if AI is creating content, art, music, maybe even inventions, but our laws say it's not an author or inventor, what does that mean for future innovation?
That's the crux of the issue. We've had cases like the Debuse AI, where its creator claimed it generated novel inventions. But patent offices globally have largely rejected this, saying an inventor must be human. Same goes for copyright generally requires a human author.
So the AI's output might not be protectable under current IP law.
Often, yes. And this raises an important question. How do we incentivize investment in developing creative AI if the things it creates can't be protected by patents or copyright?
Good point. What are the potential solutions?
There's discussion about creating new types of rights, maybe sui generis or special rights, specifically for AI-generated works, or perhaps focusing on transparency, things like mandatory watermarking to clearly label content as AI-generated, even if it's not copyrighted.
Interesting possibilities. Okay,
Yes.
this feels like a good point to zoom out and look at overall AI policy and governance. The EU AI Act is obviously the big one right now.
It is. It's really a landmark piece of legislation. The goal is ambitious. Create harmonized rules for AI across the EU, remove barriers to trade in AI systems, but most importantly, protect citizens' fundamental rights.
And it takes a risk-based approach, right? Some things are just banned.
Correct. There's a category of unacceptable risk AI systems that are prohibited outright. Things like government-run social scoring systems or using real-time biometric identification in public spaces for law enforcement with very narrow exceptions, or emotion recognition tech in workplaces or schools.
Okay, so some things are off limits. What about the next level down?
That's the high-risk category. This covers AI used in critical areas. Think infrastructure and education admissions, hiring processes, law enforcement, medical devices, managing migration.
And these high-risk systems face strict rules.
Very strict. Providers need robust risk management systems, high-quality training data, detailed technical documentation, human oversight capabilities, transparency for users, and high levels of accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity. It's a demanding list.
It sounds comprehensive. The Act also mentions supporting innovation, though.
Yes, it explicitly aims to be pro-innovation. One way it does this is by encouraging regulatory sandboxes.
What are those?
Basically, safe, controlled environments where companies can test innovative AI systems for a limited time under the supervision of regulators without immediately facing the full force of all the rules. It's meant to help startups and SMEs experiment.
Okay, so it tries to balance safety and innovation. Yeah. But are there any hidden challenges or potential weaknesses in how this act might actually work in practice?
That's a vital question to ask. While the ambition is huge, a lot of the Act's core requirements use quite broad, open-ended language terms like adequate, appropriate, robust. These will need interpretation by courts and regulators over time.
Leaving room for uncertainty.
Potentially, yes. And another significant point is the enforcement mechanism. For most high-risk AI systems, the primary check is actually self-assessment by the provider. They declare conformity themselves.
They mark their own homework, essentially.
In many cases, yes. This comes from the EU's standard approach to product regulation, the new legislative framework. But this reliance on self-assessment or audits of quality systems rather than the product itself has shown weaknesses in other sectors.
Like what?
The PIP breast implant scandal is a notorious example. Those implants had the required CE marking based on audits of the manufacturer's quality system, but the implants themselves were later found to be dangerously defective. It shows that self-assessment or system audits alone might not always catch critical flaws.
That's a really sobering parallel. So even with this landmark act, effective enforcement and overcoming the reliance on self-assessment could be major hurdles.
They certainly could be. It highlights that passing the law is just the first step. Making it work effectively on the ground, especially with such a complex and fast-moving technology, is the real challenge.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive just underscores how incredibly complex governing AI is. It's not just a tech issue, is it?
Not at all. It cuts across philosophy, law, economics, sociology. It's fundamentally about our societal values.
And there are no easy answers, clearly. No simple fixes. But getting a handle on these nuances feels crucial for everyone as AI becomes more embedded in our lives.
Definitely. And as AI learns and evolves, it really does hold up a mirror to us, reflecting our behaviors, our biases, our societal structures, both good and bad. This journey shows the future of AI isn't just about building smarter machines.
It's about us.
It's about a continuous reflection on our collective values and actively deciding what kind of society we want AI to help us build or potentially hinder us from building.
A powerful thought to end on. So, for you listening, after hearing all this, what stands out to you as the most critical challenge or maybe opportunity for AI governance in the years ahead?